wearing colorful half-frame glasses and a black cardigan with white top, smiling at the camera against a black background with the TDI Biennial Conference logo in the corner. It says TDI, 24th Biennial Conference, Reset and Reconnect in blue text, and hashtag TDICONF21 in white lettering. I feel so privileged to be one of the newer members at large at TDI, and I've learned so much being a part of this organization. I am an audiologist by trade and also a late deafened adult who uses bilateral cochlear implants. Using technology for accessibility is my jam, and I enjoy learning, teaching, and creating resources about it. I'm choosing to speak for this panel since I'm going to be navigating different windows on my computer, but I am also fluent in ASL. I am so honored to welcome our esteemed panelists for today, Nathan Gomme, Elliot Greenwald, Lise Hamlin, and Dixie Ziegler. I will be calling on them individually to introduce themselves and give a visual description. Throughout this panel, I will call on them when they raise their hands to answer questions, and then they're going to pause before speaking or signing so that people are aware where to look. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start with Nathan Gomme. So Nathan, you're on.
All right, thank you. Hello, everyone. I am Nathan Gomme. I'm the Executive Director for New Mexico Commission for Deaf and Hard of Hearing. I'm also Vice Chairperson for NGRelay, and that is the National Group of States, State Relay Administration. And just to let you know, my appearance, I'm a blonde, average height man with a blue shirt, a Caucasian male. My background now is a gray stone wall. I'm happy to be here as a panelist discussing this topic.
Thank you, Nathan. Okay, next we have Elliot Greenwald.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm Elliot Greenwald. I'm the Deputy Chief of the Disability Rights Office at the Federal Communications Commission. Let's see, I have brown hair, but nothing on top. And I'm wearing I guess it's a dark gray suit with a blue tie and a white shirt.
Okay, so I created this mug and I'm showing it to myself right now. So thank you, Elliot. So next we have Lise Hamlin.
Hi all, I'm Lise Hamlin. I'm the Director of Public Policy at Hearing Loss Association of America. I am a white female with graying brownish hair, blue glasses, and I am wearing a beige suit, actually jacket. And in the background is my home because I'm still working some of the time from home. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. All right, next, last but not least, we have Dixie Ziegler. So go ahead, Dixie.
Good afternoon. I'm Dixie Ziegler. I am Vice President for Hamilton Relay. Get to play in lots of different areas in Relay. Really excited to be here to talk about IP-CTS this afternoon with these wonderful other panelists. I am, I guess I'll have to admit, middle-aged female and wearing a blue jacket with silver gold glasses, sitting in front of a background that's a desk that you can see. I have a picture above my shoulder that's actually an old Bell office, and so seems appropriate as we talk through some telecom relay related issues this afternoon.
Thank you so much, Dixie. All right, so the goals of this session include creating a vision for the next generation of relay services, as well as understanding current technology and policy limitations and consumer needs. So this topic can go in many directions. So please start thinking about questions that you might have. You can ask them in the Q&A box, but I'll also be monitoring the chat window. All right, so let's begin. So here are some warm-up questions that we came up with. So do you anticipate smartphones replacing desktop caption phones? And what do we need to pay attention to when making the transition? So does anybody here want to go ahead and start with that? So I'm going to go ahead and call on Nathan. Go ahead, Nathan.
This is Nathan here. So yeah, I think we're good. We're on the way to transitioning to smartphone technologies and using that with everything. All the different kinds of tools we have will be in that. So if you're using an Android device, for example, you already have live transcribe in that. You have the ability to add captioning to your pilot. You can add that to various tools that you have. Podcasts, excuse me. Yeah, you can add that to your different things that you use daily. You also have Apple phones, which also have various technologies. It doesn't have the same captioning technology as Android. It's not on the same playing field, but they still have a lot of integration within their system. For example, an iWatch can be aware of the surrounding noise and provide directions and haptics feedback on those devices. That's a great example. So the two different systems, Apple and Android, that means you don't have a similar experience with each device. So that's one drawback that we've seen so far. Maybe as technology keeps coming out, they might be on the same playing field and provide the same accessibility. I'm thinking that's where we'll go. The smartphone technology is not 100% accessible for low-income individuals, those who live in areas where they don't have a good reception or services. We're not there yet, but we are getting there. The FCC is building that infrastructure out and providing those tools more and more. So I suspect in a few years, we'll see more and more opportunities coming along with mobile devices and different technologies there.
Okay, Lisa.
I think Nathan is absolutely right. I think we're really moving in the direction of smartphones. And I could see a day when we have the relay on smartphones. But I'm here to tell you, I still get requests for TTYs. There are still people out there who depend on older technology. So while we may see a movement towards smartphones and more adoption of relay through apps, I expect for a while there'll be a transition time. There'll be some time when people will be holding on for, as Nathan said, some areas don't have access to broadband. That's a problem. There are also older people who feel just more comfortable lifting up a phone than they do learning how to use a smartphone. So I think that transition will take some time.
Thank you. So next is Dixie. She had a comment.
I was really just going to really add a little bit to that. I agree, Lise, you really said a lot of what I was going to mention, that I do think that a key critical point here is to provide IP-CTS captions, specifically where customers want them and where those who need the service need them. So, whatever the screen is, wherever that might be, the whatever setting that might be in, whenever it's needed. Now, granted, I recognize that there are some boundaries inside the inside the program itself, and appropriately so. But it's important, right, that we continue, as we drive toward a vision, that we continue to really find the places where consumers need to be able to access the service and ensure that that accessibility is there.
Yeah. And so it's not just accessibility in terms of things like broadband and all of that, but it's also for, you know, our consumers that are blind and low vision. You know, are the technologies there for things like that? So any other comments? Yes, Nathan.
This is Nathan here. I want to follow up with the deafblind community. Interacting with them, a lot of them struggle with the Android devices compared to Apple devices. So that is something that needs to be solved and addressed. I think one key point that Lise mentioned is comfort with different technologies. You know, some people think it's great, but you know, they're not interested. They want to keep the same old thing that they're used to. You know, many years ago, they might have been using that phone and just got used to it and want to keep using it. But now they might want to switch to a new device, but they don't because they're used to that. It's that same concept. We have new technologies coming out, but individuals might not be interested. They want to keep what they know. So working with the deaf-blind community is something we need to continue to do.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next question. So how is the FCC addressing the increased use of ASR to make sure that it is providing effective communication?
Yeah, thank you, Tina. This is Elliot speaking. Basically, you know, we started receiving applications for automatic speech recognition technology with IP-CTS a few years ago, and we've been in the process of reviewing them. But to back up for a minute, right, you know, there are basically different ways that IP-CTS is delivered. Traditionally, 4 of the 5 providers who've been around for a while delivered it using basically using voice recognition. That they would have the communications assistants listen to what the person on the other end was saying, revoice that into an ASR program that was trained to their voice, and they would make corrections as they saw the ASR program making corrections. I would see that as quite useful during the early days of IP-CTS when ASR programs were not as good as they are now, and particularly and needed to have a voice trained to them with some significant training of a person's voice. One provider was providing IP-CTS using stenographers, you know, the same way that TV captions are provided. Now, then the FCC issued a declaratory ruling saying that ASR is a form of IP-CTS, but that providers needed specific authorization to provide IP-CTS using ASR only without the assistance of CAs. So for the rest of this discussion, I'm going to shorten this to say ASR only versus CA-assisted IP-CTS to distinguish the two. So what we did was that as parties filed applications and we were reviewing their applications, we were, of course, concerned about the quality of the ASR. So we required that parties do testing of their ASR only service to make sure that it was comparable to or better than what the CA-assisted IP-CTS is provided. And all the providers who we've authorized so far, and we've authorized 2 new providers to provide ASR only IP-CTS. That would be Machine Genius and Clarity Products, and we've authorized 2 previously existing providers who provide CA-assisted. That would be InnoCaption and Clear Captions. We tested, we had them all tested by MITRE, who's a contractor working for the FCC. So as a result, MITRE has no vested interest in any outcome. And before we granted any of those applications, we were able to see that with all 4 of those providers, that the captions that the ASR proposal had were either comparable to or better than CA-assisted captioning. But we also noticed one thing, which is under most scenarios, ASR-assisted IP-CTS seem to have a better accuracy. It's always better for caption delay, but under certain scenarios, we have found that that captioning with the ASR only is more challenging. Noisy environments and where people are otherwise speaking in the background seem to be the 2 scenarios where the testing was more challenging. But overall, we saw much better results. And our view was that consumers should be given a choice. Some consumers prefer ASR because of the privacy involved. There's no CA involved, and they prefer that. And we also made sure that, and we require, because of our rule, that that the captions cannot be saved by the provider beyond the duration of the call. So therefore, the ASR engine can't preserve those captions either beyond the duration of the call. So providers were supposed to represent that that they have that agreement with their engine provider to make sure. Now, what I think is very interesting is we have not received a plethora of complaints from ASR users. The complaints are no more different from CA assisted in terms of quantity and types of complaints. But what's even more interesting is that, and I'll mention the 2 providers that offer a mix. InnoCaption allows their users to choose their default, whether they want ASR only or CA provided captions. And when I last checked with InnoCaption, a substantial percentage of their users, they asked to keep the exact number confidential, but a substantial number of their users have chosen and use ASR only. And in fact, their users can even switch during a call. So if they decide their default is ASR, they can switch to CA provided if they're unhappy, or the other way around. They could switch in the middle of the call. And then what's very interesting is that Clear Captions, and this is public information because they filed an ex parte, met with us last week, and said that they have now, they are now at 94% use of ASR and only about 6% use of CA. They are maintaining CA for the scenarios I mentioned, and for other scenarios. They have basically an algorithm that determines, that's always running ASR in the background and determines which one is whether ASR or CA assisted is providing, according to their algorithm, that more accurate captioning. So I find that very interesting. We have not received any unusual number of complaints from Clear Captions, and they've told us they have not received any unusual number of complaints regarding ASR. So I think ASR is here. And we've recently received 2 applications, from one from Hamilton. Well, actually, before I get to that, we do have long pending an application for caption call to provide ASR in addition to CA assisted, and we're hoping to be able to issue an order on that in the near term. And then we recently received 2 applications, one from Hamilton, which we just put on public notice for comment, and that comment period is still open. And just yesterday, I think it was, we received an application from T-Mobile. So that hasn't been on public notice yet, but we should be putting that on public notice for comment soon.
I'm on mute. That's fascinating about ASR not getting as many complaints as CA, like not an unusual number. So thank you for explaining about that and letting us know about some of those things. So Dixie, I saw that your hand was raised, so you're on.
I really appreciate all that Elliot shared. That was very, very good, smart, accurate information. And I too think that allowing choice and that the FCC has made that possible for consumers to pick what's best for them, the flavor that they like, the provider that they want to use to provide these services. And so I think that all of the things that come from that, competition and ensuring that that choice remains for consumers, I think are high policy needs that the FCC always is and continues to spend time on in a variety of ways, whatever those ways may be, to ensure that there is good choice for consumers. And I know there's been some chat. I haven't kept up with all the chat, but I did see someone ask some questions there. Someone posted an article about bias in ASRs, and yes, there's been quite a few studies about the bias in ASRs, which really speaks to why choice is so important to ensure that consumers have access to IP-CTS, no matter what the call condition is, no matter who is on the call, when that call needs to take place, and that high quality can however the service needs to be provided, whether that's with a CA or however that might be, to ensure that high quality is available to all IP-CTS users. So I think there's another question about word error rate somewhere in there too, and I would jump in that I do believe that MITRE is using a word error rate, but that is something that the commission also has as an open item. Maybe Elliot will spend a little bit of time talking about that as we look to develop even stronger and more defined quality metrics for IP-CTS.
Thank you so much. Does anybody else have any comments? Okay, Lisa.
I think what Dixie was saying about consumer choice really is really an important piece here. Consumers see a need for competition so that each has their own flavor, as Dixie was saying, each has their own style. I will say, as a user of IP-CTS myself, what I have seen is that no matter who provides the service, there's always going to be some differences. There's always going to be some mistakes made. So what I have seen that works well, and I wish everybody would pick this up, but again, there are going to be different strokes for different providers here. I'd love to see being able to switch back and forth. I've had conversations with the ASR has been spot on, but there are other conversations where if it has an accent, the person has an accent that it does not recognize, the ASR is out the window. So being able to then switch over to a CA is wonderful. Likewise, there have been some CAs that aren't always at the top of their game. So being able to switch to the ASR has been really useful. So that's something I'd love to see as a baseline, but if not as a baseline, I'd love to see more providers say, this will give consumers something, because nobody's going to be 100% all the time. It's just not going to happen. We're human beings, and we're even the ASR is not a human being. It's still going to make some mistakes. So I think that having that kind of choice will really help consumers get a kind of functionally equivalent call that they really need.
Okay, Nathan.
All right, just make sure the interpreter can see me. And this is Nathan speaking. So ASR is an interesting topic. I think it's one of the most interesting things that we're talking about. So we talk about the technology behind it, the machine learning, the neural language learning and all of those things that are behind it. All of those things play important roles in how effective each of those things in ASR are. So you could use 5 different ASR technologies and have 5 different experiences. You could use ASR, you could use one. You could use one for that can recognize your speech. You could use one to comment on other things. So the system would learn you so well, learn your voice so well. So even if you're any kind of jargon that you're using, the ASR would pick that up fine. But then if other people use it, the accuracy would really suffer. So it's like Lise mentioned, accents, how they enunciate things, how they phrase things. And so you can see a difference in the accuracy. Also about how ASR, the server that's being used for the ASR, if it's a good server, if it's very stable, the connection's good and strong, then the ASR will work fine. But if there's lapses, some disconnects, or the signal drops, then I've heard stories about different people, the ASR really is saying things that are not at all aligned with what they're saying. But again, this is based on their technology, your experience that you have with the technology in your particular situation. So if you continue to use ASR, it's going to be critical because it continues to learn how we speak and phrase. And so that's just something to watch out for. And also, there's a variety of different ASRs. They're not all the same.
So I have a question for all of you. There's been some comments, but what about people that want to use IP relays? So I saw that Sveta was making some comments about this. And, I think a lot of what we've been talking about really apply to people that, use their voice to communicate. But what if you are using IP-CTS and you don't use your voice to communicate, or it's difficult for the system to understand? So how do you see technology improving or addressing this issue? Dixie, thank you.
You bet. So IP Relay is certainly a service that is available. There are, I believe there's only one provider offering that service today, but the commission continues to take comment. In fact, maybe Elliot wants to talk a little bit about that on some of the rate issues surrounding IP Relay. And I think is certainly motivated from their recent proceeding to ensure that IP Relay is widely available and available to those who really need the service. The only other thing I guess I'd add to the mix, besides for IP Relay, for those who aren't able to use their voice, David really started to hint toward this at the end of his presentation as far as real-time text communication and the level of RTT that's now available, that whole text-based experience for users. And I think David was right that we're on the cusp of that. I know that Hamilton's in the middle of some trials right now, some wireline trials. RTT's available on the wireless side. We could use this whole time just talking about RTT, I'm sure, so I won't go too deep there. But I do think that there are options available today for those who can't use their voice. And I think there's going to be even more as we move into the future. I don't know, Elliot, if you have anything you want to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's really IP-CTS and IP Relay really have two different purposes, because IP-CTS is designed for people who can speak with their voice. IP Relay is for people who need to use text going in both directions. So that's so IP Relay, and Dixie is correct. I mean, one of the reasons that and there's a separate concurrent panel going on IP Relay right now, but one of the reasons why why the FCC is about to vote on next week on a IP Relay and notice of proposed rulemaking on compensation is that we need to basically fix the compensation for IP Relay, the methodology for that. mostly because the compensation methodology for IP relay was developed 13 years ago in an entirely different market where IP relay was a much larger service and had a fair amount of competition, and unfortunately had a fair amount of fraud. And it was actually, that wasn't the only reason why IP relay is less used now. That was a major factor. But the other factor is at that time in 2007, there really wasn't a lot of VRS mobility. And so that too has decreased the demand for IP relay. But the people who use IP relay need that service and can't really use another form of TRS. Because the other forms of TRS just won't give them effective communication. So even though it's a small service, among the FCC staff, we consider it to be a very important service for those who need that for effective communication.
So more interesting comments in the chat. You know, I look forward to a day where we can choose whatever works for us, right? When we think about universal design, so that communications with hearing businesses, it doesn't matter if you want to use IP-CTS or VRS or IP relay. Do you see that coming down the road, or is there like a, you know, a new technology that's out there or something that can make this all kind of seamless? Thoughts about that? That's my wish list. Yeah, Nathan. Okay, and this will be the last comment because we have to shut down.
Okay. This is Nathan speaking. So I would love to see that happen. There's so many potential different technologies, possible technologies out there to use. No one knows which one is the best right now. You know, everyone is trying something out, seeing if this works better, and trying to still figure that out. So CSD has direct link for VRS communication. That's great. You can directly connect, speak to someone directly, which is wonderful, but not everyone uses that. For example, if I call Delta Airlines, so it doesn't work well, and then I move into the chat for Delta, and their AI you know, missed a lot of the comments I was making. There's a lot of misunderstanding, and I tried to clarify. I said, am I clear in this, you know, am I working with an agent? Am I speaking with an agent? Oh, and they were talking about the CLEAR program for easy accessibility. And I had to back up and say, no, there's a misunderstanding. I wasn't speaking with a live person. So I jumped onto Twitter and tried to actually interact with someone through Twitter. So, you know, we have to try out each of these technologies and find what works best. So I wish we had, you know, different buttons that we could have that, but we don't know which one works best. So there's different contracts with different companies out there. So we need to educate them more to find the best option, and then, you know, go through the list and find out which works best for what reasons and what situations. Then the companies need to buy into that system, and then we need to educate the community that these options are out there, and then we can work from there. And we can't rely on a one-size-fits-all mindset. You know, we're talking, think about rural areas and Native American communities. They would need to be able to use, you know, IP-CTS or CTS. So we need to ensure that companies have a way to connect with each person and find their needs, and could use graphic GUIs for that on the back end, so that where they can connect with us. And I think that would be the next place we're going.
Okay, so I am so sorry to cut this short. I think we could have gone on for another hour. And so thank you so much. I know that you all have been like monitoring the chat as well. So, you know, feel free to connect with us on our LinkedIn profiles and ask more questions. Thank you to the attendees that have come today. And we will see you in the next plenary session. So thank you very much. Have a good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much, panelists, for your wonderful comments. I really appreciate it. And thank you, communication facilitators. All right. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you.